Welcome to New View Advice with Amanda DeRocher. Hello, beautiful soul. If you are new here, welcome to New View Advice. This is a healing-centered advice podcast where I offer guidance for the healing journey. I do not believe I have all the answers you seek. I believe you have all the answers. You just may need a new view and a little help along the way. And to any long-term listeners, thank you. Thank you for returning to the podcast. Thank you for being here. And thank you for your patience with me as I took an unexpected hiatus. I always wish I was one of those people who would let their audience know they were taking a break, but I find that when I need a break, I just need a break pretty immediately, and that has just been my process. So I'm just very grateful for everybody who has returned to the podcast and is still interested in listening. I took a break for a couple weeks because I just needed to be with my own heart, all inner work, all past things that I just needed to be with. I needed to be with my own heart. I also have found that the world recently feels really loud. There seems to be a lot of noise, is the only way I can put it. And sometimes I find it hard to show up when there's a lot of noise. So I need to take the time to be in silence and to be with myself and to remind myself of my own truth, my own intentions, and to just remain in integrity with who I am and what is important to me. And so with that, I just wanted to say thank you again to everyone who continues to come back to the podcast. I am more grateful than I can ever articulate for this community and for everyone's support. So thank you. And with that, I have been spending a lot of time thinking about courage and what true courage is. And so today's episode topic is inspired by me. This is a topic I really wanted to flesh out for myself. And so today we are talking about the topic, how to embrace courage over fear. I really wanted to cover this topic because I found myself feeling frustrated over the past month that I saw some people being called courageous online who I don't view as courageous. And I was like, what is true courage? And I needed to be with my own heart and my own truth and know what courage is for me. And I don't think courage is being the loudest person in the room, being the most aggressive person in the room. Often, true courage is quiet. And true courage often isn't done in front of an audience. True courage to me is often in the small moments, in the human moments, in the moments where there's intimacy with one other person or yourself. So today we're going to talk about what is courage, why is courage important for the healing journey, why do many of us struggle to be courageous even though we truly want to be courageous. We're going to talk about some steps we can take towards courage in our own lives. So my intention for this episode is to help you to see, one, that you are likely more courageous than you give yourself credit for, and two, to help you to embrace courage in your own life. Because what I think happens many times is that we think courage will feel different than it really does. We think courage is being fearless and feeling strong and powerful, when truly courage often feels like we're shaking in our boots. We feel really afraid, but we do the thing that our heart is asking us to do, the thing we feel called to do anyway. But oftentimes it does feel really scary to be courageous. So before I jump into today's episode, I wanted to mention that if you're interested, you can check out newviewadvice.com for more resources on the healing journey. I have podcast episodes, meditations, journal prompts, poems, blog posts. I have lots of things to assist you on the healing journey and to help you to see a new perspective. I have lots of different topics. We cover many different things on newviewadvice.com. So if you're interested in that, I invite you to check that out after the episode. And today's episode show notes will be at newviewadvice.com/140. So with that, let's jump on into talking about courage. All right. So what is courage? I wanted to define courage, my definition of courage up front here, because as I said, I've been looking out in the world and I've been seeing people call people who are just really loud courageous, and I don't necessarily think that that is courage. So to me, courage is being brave enough to do the things that scare us. It's showing up to life even when we're scared, and it's doing things that terrify us. I think that courage is choosing to take actions that align with our hearts and our values, even when it might lead to discomfort, rejection, or pain. It's standing up for who we want to be, even when the world tells us to be someone else. I believe that courage is essential because no meaningful change can happen in our lives without courage. Courage is the foundation to anything new. Courage isn't about being fearless. It's about dancing with fear. It's about learning to tango with your own fear. It's knowing that everyone who has done anything new, brought any change into their life, has also dealt with their own fear. It's knowing that when resistance arises within us, which is often fear, or terror. It's not there to stop us. I believe it's there to almost slow us down. It's like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do this? And courage is saying, yes, I am sure I want to do this. This is what my heart's asking of me. I believe that when we're courageous, we're following, as I said, our heart and our values. And in order to do this, we have to be connected to ourselves. And I believe that that is following our own inner compass. So as we talk about here on New View Advice, I believe we all have the answers we seek. And that is connecting to you and your inner compass. And so often your inner compass isn't going to tell you the same thing as someone else's inner compass. And courage is doing the thing that your compass is telling you, not someone else's. So many times when we're on the path of wanting to be courageous and do new things, we'll often listen to everyone else's compass, and it won't be quite right. And we'll be led back to our own inner compass, to our own inner truth, and the thing that we maybe tried to walk around, the thing that scares us most. And that's when courage comes in. It's when we know what we have to do to be true to ourselves and true to our own heart, and we do it anyway. I believe courage is so important for the healing journey. And if you're here, I believe you are already courageous because healing takes real courage. I've really been reflecting on this idea in my own life, how you really are courageous if you're healing. Because in my own life, I used to hear that a lot. You're brave if you're healing from trauma. Especially I used to hear it in regards to healing from rape. You're brave. You're brave. You're strong. You're courageous. And the truth is, for a long time, I logically knew that. I was like, yeah, I'm brave. But I didn't feel that way. I couldn't connect with that word courage because I didn't know how I was brave if I was so freaking terrified all the time. Because when I was first healing from rape, I was terrified. I've talked about it on other episodes, but I suffered from repressed trauma. So I repressed the sexual violence I experienced and the memories, the knowing in my body, the really hard to articulate experience of repressed trauma came back in my 20s. And when it came back, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified of the information that was coming back. I was absolutely terrified of what my body was telling me. I was terrified of the images. I was so afraid all the time. But I kept moving forward. I kept looking for things to help me heal. I kept pushing through even on the days I didn't know if I could. I kept waking up the next day and doing it again. And on the days that I couldn't, I would go to bed and say tomorrow would be better. And I kept day by day committing to my healing, committing to a life that I knew could exist. I knew that I didn't have to live in this trauma of rape for the rest of my life. And I knew that it would always be a part of my story, which it is. But I knew in my heart of hearts that I didn't have to feel so debilitated by it, that I could get to a different place with this journey, to the other side of it, so to speak. And the truth is, the other side of it isn't exactly what I thought a long time ago. It's different, and I've talked about that in a lot of episodes. But the whole point of this is that I look back at myself from about 25 when my memories came back. And gosh, she was brave. She did not know where this journey was taking her, and she did it anyway. She kept going. She kept listening to her heart, because one of the reasons I started this podcast was because when I would try to talk about this trauma, specifically rape, I was told things that I didn't like over and over again. I was told over and over again that it was something I was just gonna have to learn how to live with. And I didn't know how to articulate to people at the time that I couldn't live the way I was living for the rest of my life. But I bring all that up because I would not have called myself brave at 25. I felt like I was doing everything I could to survive. I was not thriving in any way. I was pulling myself up day by day with just a prayer in my heart to heal, that I wouldn't have to live the way I was living, that I didn't have to live with the amount of pain I felt, that there would be a day that I wouldn't think about that trauma, or there would be a day that it didn't break my world, or that I would learn how to function again. Because with repressed trauma, there was a long time when I didn't really know how to function. And I felt this immense pressure to show up in a different way, and I was unable to. And so I didn't feel courageous. But I look back now, so many years later, and I think, dang, that girl was brave. Holy moly, that's courage. I hope at my old age of 33, I'm joking, I don't think I'm old, but I look back at that version of myself and I'm like, I want some of your courage, girl, because I didn't realize I was courageous because I was so afraid. But I was so afraid because I was looking at my fears. I was coming face to face with truths I had buried within myself, with realities that were so terrifying. I wasn't able to look at them, process them, feel them, and heal them for years later. Of course, that was scary. And that was true courage, that I kept going, that I knew there was a way forward. And I'm still on my healing journey. I'm not perfect, but I can look back at the beginning of this journey and say, holy moly, I am in an entirely new place. And that is beautiful. And that was courage. You are very courageous too every time you choose to heal and every time you choose love over fear, because the healing journey is a journey of self-love. It is a journey back to love. I find that so many of us have experienced things throughout our life that were not loving. Maybe that was in our family structures. Maybe that was through trauma. Maybe that was through sexual violence, different form of violence. Maybe that was through toxic relationships. But we experienced very painful things that were not loving. And healing is learning how to love ourselves and open up to love and deep love and vulnerability in the world. Many times we come to healing when we realize how closed off we are from the world and from love, and we may feel stuck in fear. And oftentimes fear can keep us stuck, and that's why it takes courage to move forward even when we feel afraid. So for anybody listening right now, I just want you to know that I think you're courageous. I see you as being courageous. Even if you don't feel it, you are courageous. It is courageous to heal. It is courageous to do the inner work. We just don't always feel like it's courageous because it's really, really hard. And that's one of the truths with courage is it's hard to be courageous. And so that leads me to that in each and every one of our lives, courage is going to look different. It's not always loud. It's not always bold. And sometimes it is loud and sometimes it is bold. So I also want to say that too. So sometimes if you have been somebody who has never fought a battle for yourself, right? Never stood up for yourself. Courage could be standing up for yourself. It could be choosing that fight when you normally would flee, or when you normally would roll over, or when you normally would people please. But courage could also be, if you're somebody who tends to live in that fight place and yell at everybody and point the finger, courage could be taking a step back. Courage could be choosing your battles. Courage could be walking away. I think in healing, courage takes many forms. To me, courage is when you learn to listen to your heart over the noise of the outside world. It's when you tune into that inner compass and you trust it and you listen to it, even if it doesn't make logical sense. I'm a big believer that sometimes it pays to be illogical, because if you want to do something different in this world, if you want to be different, if you want to create something new, sometimes you're going to have to do something illogical, something that goes against the norm. And I think that that takes courage. So I wanted to give some other examples of courage because I believe courage is often quiet, intimate, and vulnerable. To be courageous in our daily life, there's so many different acts we could take. I think it's courageous to tell somebody you love them or to tell somebody how you really feel. Maybe it's telling your partner that they hurt you when you normally would stay quiet. Or maybe it's telling a loved one that you feel disconnected from them. Or maybe it's telling somebody who's in your life, I love you so much, I'm afraid to lose you. I think it takes courage to forgive someone who hurt you. And I believe we forgive people for ourselves to free ourselves of the past, not for them. We don't just give forgiveness away. I don't think you actually can. I think true forgiveness is when we have honored ourselves and all our feelings, and then we're able to let an experience or a pain go. And again, we do that for ourselves. And that leads me into that I think it's courageous to feel our feelings. We live in a world that often punishes or looks down or tells people that they're weak for having feelings. I think it's the opposite. Our feelings are connected to our inner compass. Our feelings lead the way. Our feelings tell us our own personal truth. And when we stop ignoring them, we get to connect to ourselves and our heart. And that is a truly courageous act, especially in a world that tends to bury their feelings. It takes courage to look at the ways you may have been hurt by your family, your mother, your father, your siblings. Those family patterns, those family wounds run deep. It takes true heart and courage to be honest with ourselves about how much we have been hurt in the past, especially by the people, those we consider family or those who were supposed to love us most. It takes true courage to look at that. Asking for support on your healing journey and choosing not to go at it alone, that takes courage. Ending a relationship that no longer serves you or setting a boundary with somebody who you've never set a boundary with. Admitting you disagree with somebody, even if it's uncomfortable. Looking honestly at your fears and where they originated. Connecting with your inner child. Starting a new creative project. Starting a family. Going on a first date. Keeping your word when it's hard. Trying something new, even when failure is possible. That always takes courage. Or taking a break. That takes courage in a world that tells us that our worth is defined by our productivity. Standing up for someone when you see injustice happening or when you see cruelty or bullying happening. That takes true courage. Speaking your truth with love, even when you know it might hurt someone. choosing yourself after years of people pleasing, leaving a job that drains you, and facing your deepest fears. All of that takes courage. And many of those things I've mentioned will happen in small moments with yourself, not with an audience, and you won't get an applause. You can write in here and I will applaud you and I will tell you I am so proud of you. But truly, most of those things I mentioned will be you having to honor you and your own courage. With all that said, why do we still struggle to be courageous, even though we want to be courageous, right? So I just listed a bunch of things that are courageous, and you might be thinking, yeah, I want to do those, but why am I so afraid? And I think a lot of us, myself included, struggle to be courageous because it's scary, because fear is real. It is scary to face our fears. It is scary to step into the unknown. It's scary to embrace vulnerability and not know what will happen on the other side. It's scary to open our hearts when we could face rejection. What if we get hurt? What if the risk isn't worth it? What if we get left out in the cold? And so I think so many times we turn away from our own courage because we're trying to protect ourselves. No one wants to be hurt. It can feel completely counterintuitive to willingly walk into a situation where fear is present and where pain is possible. I think so many times we've been hurt in the past, and that can cloud our vision of the future. I think when we've been hurt before and we've experienced trauma, and when we're healing and we become aware of how much pain we've experienced in the past, we want to feel safe. Part of the healing journey is learning to feel safe in our body and in our life. At least that's been a big part of my healing journey, is creating inner safety. And so it can be scary to do something courageous that could rock that sense of safety. That's also one of the reasons that the healing journey is so beautiful, is that we create that inner safety so that we can begin to be more courageous in our outer worlds. So if you know you're safe within and you have your own back and you love yourself, it's easier to put yourself in a situation where you might get hurt because you know you have you. And that's why so often when healing, it's about creating that inner home, that place and that love within yourself so that we can do more and more courageous acts. And again, it's courageous to even create that inner safety. It's courageous to begin to flush out the beliefs that were never yours to carry, or the projections of others, or how I view them, the lies people told you about yourself. It is courageous to begin to peel that back and to see that that's not true and to let that go. And when preparing this episode, it really had me looking back on my 20s. And I was so much braver back then. So if anybody in your 20s, I honor you if you're out there doing all the courageous things, because I was so much braver in my 20s. And that wasn't because I was fearless, but it was because I didn't know what I didn't know. And I had no clue what I was doing ever. But in my 20s, I felt like I had my whole life ahead of me. So I wasn't so afraid all the time. I just kept moving forward and I kept thinking everything would be the big thing in my life. And so I just kept doing all these brave things. And I didn't even know I was courageous back then because I just thought everything would work out for me. It was pretty naive. I was pretty naive back then. And I didn't carry the same weight of disappointment I do now. And I didn't have all the wisdom I have now. Because now in my 30s, I'm much more cautious. I'm much more intentional with the things I do. And that's a beautiful thing. But it can also keep me stuck. And what I find with courage is that the older I get, it's really finding the balance between caution, wisdom, learning from the past, but also still carrying that bravery of my younger self to try new things, to move forward, to allow myself to embrace the unknown. I think as we get older, we become more cautious. And so for anybody in their 20s, I invite you to really embrace that energy of the 20s that's about trying new things. And for anybody older who feels more cautious, I also invite you to be bold and try new things and to take all the wisdom from your past selves and use it to be intentional moving forward. And one more thing I wanted to mention in this section about why we can struggle with courage is to any perfectionists listening. I think a lot of perfectionists struggle with courage because courage is messy. Doing something new is messy. Doing something unknown is messy. You can't control the outcome. And being bold, especially at the beginning, can be awkward. It's vulnerable. Again, I come back to the word messy. It can't be perfect. And perfectionism is often about control. It's believing that if you get everything right, if everything is perfect, you'll be safe, or you won't be judged, or you won't fail, or you'll be able to control how people perceive you. And the truth is, courage requires you to let go of the fear of how people will perceive you, or let go of the fear of doing something quote unquote wrong. Because I don't think it's wrong to try new things. I think we can fall on our ass or we can stumble and fall, but then we learn to pick ourselves back up again. This kind of reminds me of how a lot of people will ask me about self-esteem and they'll be like, I have really low self-esteem. And these days, my first question is, have you done anything to build that self-esteem? Because self-esteem is built over time. It's built by facing adversity. It's built by facing fears. It's not something we're just given from birth. It's built over time. We build self-esteem by seeing that we can overcome challenges, by seeing our own resilience. So courage is a foundation for building self-esteem, for being true to yourself, and for letting go of perfectionism, because we can all fall into perfectionism, especially hardworking, driven people. But the truth is that perfectionism is keeping you from your heart. It's keeping you from connection and love. If you're feeling disconnected from people, but you're a perfectionist, it might be because you're only showing people the mask that you think they'll like. What happens if you take that mask down? That takes real courage and bravery to let go of the mask or the performative version of ourselves. So I want to mention that because I think sometimes we can get stuck in perfectionism or wanting to perfect something before we do something. And courage very often is a scary action. It's messy, but that messiness is brave. That messiness is where that alive feeling comes from. I think sometimes we fear uncomfortable feelings, but truthfully, to feel alive, you have to feel all of it. You can't just feel the good ones. You have to allow yourself to feel the full human spectrum, and there is beauty in that. Because when we allow ourselves to feel pain, on the other side of that is release. There is peace, there is love, there is joy. We often have to allow ourselves the waves of the emotional journey. So with all that information, you may be asking yourself, Amanda, but how do I step forward? How do I become courageous? How do I actually take steps towards my courage? So these are the 4 steps I've come up with to help us all step more into courage and bravery in our own lives. So the first thing is name your fear. If you're feeling afraid of something, if you're feeling afraid of your next step, if you're feeling afraid of telling somebody you love them, if you're feeling afraid of your feelings, I invite you to name your fear. Say it out loud. Say it to someone you trust. Write in your journal. Comment it on this episode. Email it to me. But get it out of your head. Our fears hold power over us when we keep them in our head, when we keep them silent, when we don't really acknowledge them. There is so much power in getting these things outside of our head. When they remain in our head, they seem so much bigger. I can't tell you the amount of times in therapy I've said this fearful thought out loud, and after I say it, I'm always like, that's not as scary as I thought. It almost feels silly now that I've said it out loud. These things can torment us when we keep them in our head. Giving them voice, giving them space, getting it out is a really helpful act. And I really believe that naming your fear is an act of courage in itself. Being honest with yourself is courageous. Having the courage to admit your fears to yourself is courageous. The second thing I recommend is to look at these inner beliefs and these fears that are keeping you stuck. So once you name that fear, begin to go deeper. Where did this fear come from? Is it connected to a past disappointment that has made you afraid to try again? Did a parent, a teacher, a bully, a friend, a coworker, did they discourage you? Did they put you down? Did they put this belief in your head? Were some of your greatest gifts shamed as a child? Were you told you were too sensitive because you have a big heart? Were you told you were too emotional because you were connected to your feelings? Were you told you were too much because you had a lot of feelings about the world you live in? Were you told you were weak? Were you told that you weren't creative? Were you told something that has stuck for too long and is now ready to leave? You know, I've been looking at my own life, and one of the beliefs I looked at recently is that I learned at an early age to shrink my fire. I have a lot of passion, and often in this podcast, I try to remain calm, keep a calm voice. But in my life with Evan, oh my gosh, I am so passionate. I have so many feelings about everything. But it's taken me a long time to get connected back to that fire, to that part of me that feels so deeply everything. She feels the depths. She knows what makes her angry. She knows what injustice feels like. She knows when something is wrong. But when I was younger, I was told I was too much. I was too dramatic. I was too emotional. I see the visual as people in my life that would throw water on me when that fire would come up. And I was told I didn't understand the world. But the truth is, I think we could all learn from children. Children actually see things clearer than so many adults. They are not so stuck in old beliefs. They may not be able to articulate their truth, but children can feel their truth. They can feel in their bodies when something is right and wrong. They know. And when we discourage them, as you and I may have been discouraged in our lives, we begin to teach them to be disconnected from who they are, rather than teaching them how to articulate how they're feeling or how to be with those feelings in a healthy way. And I mention that because I think many of us had experiences where we were shamed and we carry that shame still. And it takes courage to admit that. It takes courage to look at the shame, and it takes courage to let go of the shame. But you deserve to live free of shame. I really believe that. We all deserve to feel free to be who we are, our authentic selves. And I just want you to know that I give you permission to be too much, because I think the world could use more heart-centered people, more people healing, being a little too much. I see a lot of nefarious people, sinister people who are very loud, people who are stuck in division and hatred, people who do not offer a helping hand, but instead choose power, greed, and arrogance. So many of those people are the people who are loud today. I want you to know that I give you permission to be loud in your life if it's something you haven't been before. Some people maybe need to take a step back, but if you're listening to this podcast, my guess is maybe you need some permission to be loud in your life. And guess what? It's going to be messy. It's going to be messy at first. Being loud, being vocal, it's not this perfect process. It's messy, and there's some fun in that. It's fun to allow ourselves to be messy. Because the world doesn't need more watered down people, so to speak. The world needs people who burn bright, people who are lit up, people who know what's true for them because they've taken the time to know it, because they've done the inner work. The world needs more people like that. So my third piece of advice is to create a courage mantra. I think that this can be really helpful if you find yourself in fear, to just have a simple statement that's personal to you, that reminds you of your courage, that tells you you are courageous, and helps you to rewrite those fear narratives in your head. Right now, my mantra is, I'm courageous when I share my truth, even if no one is listening. That's personal to me. Yours is going to be entirely different, but your mantra doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be long. It just has to feel true for you. Maybe it's, I'm courageous when I feel my feelings. I am courageous every day I show up for myself. I am courageous when I set boundaries. I am courageous when I take time off from work. I am courageous when I put myself first. I am courageous when I speak my truth. It's going to be different for you, but I think that these simple statements can help us to just rewire our thoughts, can help us to remember that we're trying to be courageous. Sometimes when we feel fearful, we forget everything we ever wanted, and we just get stuck in that fear, and these statements can help pull us back to the present. My final piece of advice is that I invite all of us to take one small action, one small step towards something that scares us. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be for an audience. It just has to be something true for you. So do you need support on your healing journey? Maybe your first courageous act is starting to research options. Do you need to tell somebody how you feel? Have you been hiding your feelings from someone? Take a step towards telling them how you feel. Do you want love in your life, but you've been really afraid to put yourself out there? Maybe take a first step towards meeting new people. Do you need to set a boundary in your life? Do it, even if it's messy. Allow yourself to move through the discomfort. I invite you today to do something that scares you. Don't let the fear stop you from doing what your heart is asking you to do. You are worthy of the life you long for. You are worthy of the life you envision for yourself. You are worthy of feeling alive. And courage is how we get there, one brave step at a time. And before I close out this episode, I just want you to know that you're more courageous than you know. If you are healing from any sort of trauma, from any relationship, from any childhood wounds, that is courage. You are brave. So many people never look inside. All they do is project outwards. All they do is focus on external reality, and they never sit with their heart and their inner child and their self. They never even take the time to get to know themselves. You getting to know you, you connecting with you, you learning to love you, you being compassionate with you, that is brave and that is beautiful. And trust me, the world needs more people who do that. It matters more than you know, the time you've taken to get to know yourself. One day, if you have not already done it, you are going to look back and be so grateful for the time you took to get to know yourself, to face your fears, to heal from your traumas. It is worth it. It is not easy, but that is courage. Courage is one step at a time. It is not the limelight. It is not this big thing that people see. It is so often small acts without an applause, but just doing what you know you need to do for you. And so, with that, thank you for being on this journey of courage with me. I truly love this community. I am so grateful for every single person who takes the time to listen with an open heart. You don't have to like me, you don't have to even agree with me. But I thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode and to hear my view on courage and to hear a new perspective. And thank you for witnessing me in my courage, because it took a lot for me to get behind this microphone today. And I am so grateful that I did. So thank you. Thank you for joining me for another episode of New View Advice. I am so grateful for each and every person who takes time out of their week to listen to these episodes. If you haven't already, I invite you to leave a rating and review for the podcast. Ratings and reviews help to bring more people to the podcast and help to support me and my work. Thank you so much if you've already rated the podcast, and thank you to anybody who takes the time to leave a rating or a review. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you again for joining me for this episode. I hope I was able to offer you a new view on whatever you may be going through. Sending you all my love. See you next time.